Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Outreach with Reggie. I'm your host, Reggie Holloway, and in this podcast episode, it is all about the power of community, action, and purpose. Today, we're going to talk about something that often gets overlooked: how to just be there and how just being there can grow into real leadership. This episode is called From Presence to Power. Let's talk about what it means to go from showing up to stepping up in every way possible. Stay tuned. When people talk about leadership, they usually picture someone on a stage with a microphone in their hand, giving speeches or making big moves, being a local official or state official or even the president, or it has to be some capacity that you have some form of hierarchy or you have a commanding say so or commanding lead. But real leadership often starts way quieter than that. Sometimes it just starts with showing up. I remember back when I started getting into the advocacy role or becoming youth advocate, and I was given this task, and the opportunity presented itself to share a bit of my story, and I was given 5 minutes. And we were talking about how we can make changes within the juvenile court system and how they view foster care or foster children. And because I grew up in the foster care system, I feel like, yeah, I'm confident in my story, but here you have over 100 or close to 100 juvenile court judges, and just the idea of that can be very intimidating. But at the time, I did feel like it was intimidating, and it was like, oh, this could be very scary. I'm only given 5 minutes to speak and give my story on how to give something, not only of my story, but just how can I help in these capacities? And then I often think about it, right? Here I am. If you change the perspective around like I did, here's an opportunity to not only share my story, but to share what's currently going on in today's day regarding the foster care system, especially when you think about many of the children who go from the foster care system onto the juvenile court system, but no one really thinks about them as foster kids. They look at the crime, or they become very interested in what the crime is rather than the person, and then they become a number. So I started to think less about being anxious or the anxiety that came with what I was telling them of what I've been through, but I decided to see how can I use my story as a introduction into the things that goes on, that be it stats, that be it children that are in the system now, that being things that you can do. Because I remember talking to one of the judges, and he ended up telling me before the conference started, before they gave me the 5 minutes to speak, that they don't often look for the story. They often look at the number and the statistics. So I had an hour to look up these statistics, and they're fairly easy. I mean, it's out there, thankfully, for the researchers. And I just started writing them down, and I kept them in my nice pocket. And once I was given the platform, I took half of that to tell about my story. And it was very simplistic: 17 years in the foster care system, aged out of care. But I also had the opportunity to say, hey, as these young children are coming into your courthouse or courtroom, look at the representation they have. Look at the child appointed attorneys. See how much of a voice that they have in this space. But I say all these things to say that as I said those things, before I move on to the next point, I say all these things to say, as those 5 minutes were up, I spoke to the judge again and he allowed me to work with him. And then I worked with another judge to explain to many more case managers, child attorneys, and judges that, hey, if we look at it from this point of view, maybe this is something you can take within your counties and your cities, and you can introduce this for them so they can now start looking at these children from this point of view, and they'll be able to have a safer transition towards adulthood. But I say all that's within the story to say that I didn't think of myself as a leader. I'm merely giving my story. I couldn't think of myself as a leader. Anyway, I just felt called to help. And if it takes my story, my testimony, the things I've been through, both good and bad, to do it, I am happy that I was able to show up and to do what I was asked and do what was needed. And then, just like with that judge or within the people that listened, because I can never change what you are able to hear. I was never able to ask or maybe even think about, man, well, I hope they took something. I hope I was able to inspire. I just, I give all thanks and I'm become appreciative. But if there's one person I was able to connect with and that inspires them to make change, I welcome it. I welcome it. I welcome the connection. And in that room, I was able to have more than one person. Many people congratulated me. Many people gave me a lot of praise and a lot of thanks for sharing my story, but a few judges decided off of that one meeting prior, maybe sitting down for 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes over breakfast, and then 5 minutes of me giving my story. They decided to say, hey, young man, I got this conference. Would you like to speak in front of these judges and case workers and child attorneys and school board members? Because we'd love to have you talk. So I have the opportunity to speak in front of a school board, had opportunity to speak at a few more places, and that led me to do a lot more conferences and share my story. But along with that, make impactful change within my local community. People started to notice. And as they started to notice, they started to ask for my thoughts. They began to trust me and they began to trust in me. And I say these things without a sense of pride. I say these things because you too can make these same changes. And it doesn't have to look like my story. But that is when, as I look at my own story, I realized that consistency builds credibility, and credibility builds power. Now, as I break this down, let me explain to you that you don't need to have a title to have influence. You don't need to have a title to be a leader, a conduit of change. You do not need to have a title to have influence. You do not need to have a platform to make change. But what you do need is a presence. And presence is within the little things. Presence means showing up even when no one else does. When you're tired. When you feel invisible. When you think your voice does not matter. When a lot of stuff happens that is out of your control, but you're still called. When your presence is still needed. Because what happens is that presence starts to turn into visibility. People notice who keeps coming back. Even when you don't think they know. Oh, they start to get familiar. They may not know your name, but they know you. They see you. because you have a presence, because they noticed who's willing to help without a camera or a hashtag. And eventually, those people get invited into the spaces where decisions are made. But here's the truth. If you care, you're already qualified to be in those spaces. If you show up consistently, you're already building power. And if you are listening to this, you are already on the journey. I want to speak directly to someone right now who may feel like, Reggie, I'm not a leader. I'm just trying to survive. But the thing is, though, if I may be transparent, I have those same moments. I still feel like I'm not a leader. I'm just trying to be someone who sees what's going on and make sure my presence there as well. But the thing is, leadership does not always mean leading a crowd. I assure you it doesn't. Sometimes it means being the one person who dares to stay, dares to speak, or dares to just serve when others don't. Furthermore, leadership does not always appear what it looks like when you look on the TV. It's not always a podium. It's not always a big crowd, like I mentioned before. Leadership is quiet, it's faithful, and it's behind the scenes as well. Sometimes it looks like the mom who keeps showing up to the school board meeting, even when they keep ignoring her. Sometimes it's the guy who picks up the trash from the sidewalk, even though no one says thank you. Sometimes it's you showing up for a friend, checking up on your neighbor, staying after church to clean up the chairs. And please do not let the world fool you into thinking what you're doing is small. Because what is small to the world is sacred to the community. And here's the wild thing. People who are consistent, they become the anchors. They are the ones others turn to when things fall apart. Not because they have a little, because they've been there. So if no one's told you lately, I see you. Oh, please believe I see you. And more importantly, your community feels you. Even when they don't say it out loud yet, please keep going. Because showing up isn't just the beginning of leadership, it is leadership. Within this next section, I want to take it a step further. I want to go deeper. Because presence isn't just about community events or public spaces. And I know I said within this podcast about how to move within these public spaces and community events or just the community that you're a part of. But I want to go deeper. Sometimes the real test of presence is within your relationships. So let me ask you, how are you showing up for the people closest to you? Not when it's just convenient, not just when things are going well, but the hard, the quiet, and the uncomfortable moments as well. Because presence in a relationship might look like calling your sibling just to say, I'm thinking about you. Sitting in silence with a friend who is grieving and not needing to fix it. Not walking away when the conversation gets real or the mood gets heavy. Saying, I'm not perfect, but I am still here. And on the flip side of that, Maybe it's even showing up for yourself. So, my question to you is, how are you showing up for yourself too? Let's take some time, a few seconds to think in that. Because maybe it's finally saying, I deserve relationships where presence goes both ways. Because showing up doesn't mean being a doormat, it means being intentional, it means being honest. It means saying, I care enough to stay engaged, to try, to love without vanishing. Because let's be real here. We live in a world where ghosting is normal, where silence is the easy way out, where people quit on each other fast. So when you choose to stay present in love, in friendship, in family, even through tension or discomfort, that is leadership too. Leadership isn't always about leading crowds. I will impute this into your brain. Leadership isn't always about leading crowds, speaking in front of thousands and thousands of people. It's about leading with your heart as well. It's about going first, being the first to forgive, the first to ask, are you okay? The first to stay, the first to say, I'm still here. And if no one ever taught you how to do that, that's okay. Because you get to be the one who breaks the pattern. You get to be the one who teaches presence by practicing it. Not perfectly, but faithfully. So here's your challenge this week. Find one place to be consistently present in your community, whether it's a school, a church, a local board meeting, a shelter, or just checking on a neighbor or within the people that's in your community. Show up, even when no one claps, even when they don't notice right away, even when no one says thank you. Because presence oftentimes is silent, but in movements of silence, it plants seeds. And when nurtured, it grows into power and impact. And you're not alone in this walk this week. I'm not a man who's perfect. I slipped up in those areas before. My days are just like yours. But I'll continue to plant those seeds. And as I plant with you, I see you. I'm watching. And I thank you. Thank you for being here with me on Outreach with Reggie. If you've been enjoying these episodes, I'd love for you to leave a review or share it with someone who's ready to turn presence into purpose. And don't forget to tap into this week's Spotify poll. Where do you feel called to show up more in your community? And check us out on Instagram at Outreach with Reggie for more updates and behind the scenes reflections. Until next time, keep showing up and keep shining. And remember, your presence is power. Thank you and take care.